Minister is facing pressure this morning to step down amid a growing crisis over those alleged lockdown-breaking Christmas parties at Number 10. And now leaked footage showing stuffers joking about it the same day as 691 people died of COVID.
Well, the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, resigned over his own breaking of lockdown rules. He joins us this morning because, of course, one of your greatest achievements as Health Secretary was overseeing the vaccine rollout, and it is exactly a year to the day since we spoke to you on this programme as we saw the first vaccine be given to the first patient. And of course, as we spoke to you, you were emotional about it. Maybe we'll see the pictures now. Of course, a number of people criticised your reaction, didn't they, at the time?
Yeah, but it was a really emotional moment. You know, we'd been working on the vaccine for almost a year, and it came off. And in fact, just before that that clip that you've just shown now, I was whilst I was watching the video, I'd completely lost it. I just about pulled myself together to be able to answer questions, because it was incredibly emotional, because the vaccine's the way out of this.
Today, we mark a year anniversary since that. And of course, since that day, I think 118 million jabs have been administered. However, we have data this morning about the Omicron variant and whether it might evade vaccines.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about that?
I am. Of course, in the year since the vaccine was first rolled out, it's not just the over 100 million here, it's that there have been billions of vaccinations around the world, because that was the first in the whole world. But the data out yesterday from South Africa is very worrying. The thing that we haven't got, and what could be good news, is whether the Omicron disease is less serious than from the previous ones. But I'm really worried. I'm really very worried about the data from South Africa.
It says the antibodies from the Pfizer vaccine may be up to 40 times less effective against Omicron than the original COVID strain.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that it won't be effective.
No, and it's still much, much better to be vaccinated than not, and it's vital that you get the booster, and I'm glad the government are accelerating the booster programme today. But one of the things that Dr. Hillary said earlier is, but if you've had the disease and been vaccinated, like me for instance, then basically it's fine. Well, that's all very well for about a fifth of us in this country who've had the disease, but most people haven't. So we've got to get those boosters in arms. These data are really very worrying.
You lost your job because you broke the social distancing rules. It will come up for you again and again and again. When you see reports that there was a party which broke potentially the law at Downing Street last year on December the 18th, do you think there was one rule for you and one rule for the rest of them?
Well, I don't know anything about the party.
Don't you?
Don't
we all know everything about the party now?
Well, I've read the papers, but I don't know anything else about it. I wasn't invited. I wasn't there. I don't think anybody's saying that.
Have you not messaged anybody at Downing Street? Any friends, old friends? Do you not have any old friends left at Downing Street you could text?
No, because I only found out about it late last night, and then I got up pretty early this morning.
If I was in your position, knowing I'm coming onto this show and doing, surely you would ask. Have you not asked anybody? Even over a week ago? I've seen what's in the newspapers, but I don't think anybody's saying that the Prime Minister was at this party.
No, I think that's one thing we know, is that the Prime Minister wasn't there, but 50 other people were. Look, the reason we asked you is because, firstly, you're the only Conservative, i.e. government party MP, who's prepared to come on the programme this morning, out of all the people that we asked. And secondly, you were the Health Secretary, who was in charge when those rules were put into place. You know, we'd had a lockdown, we'd had a second lockdown, and London was in Tier 3 restrictions. Nobody else could get together in a room with anybody unless they were in a bubble with them. You could only meet people outdoors. Meanwhile, 50 people in Downing Street are having cheese and wine and playing Secret Santa. And then we see the video that came out last night, which suggested that those people who were the spokespeople for the government, were preparing to give an answer about it. How do I answer that? What is the correct answer? There was no social distancing. 691 people died that day, and you were the health secretary who was trying to stop those deaths.
Yes, and as I say, I don't know anything more about it than that. What I know is that the Prime Minister said that no rules were broken, and nobody's suggesting that he was at this party. And as you say, I was working incredibly hard at the time. And
you've seen that video with Allegra Stratton, this rehearsed press conference where they're laughing about what happens if somebody asks the question, was there a party at Downing Street? Having watched that, what do you now think? Do you think there was a party at Downing Street?
Well, I do know. You know,
the rest of the nation does.
I've done a lot of those press conferences, and I know that you rehearse all of the difficult potential questions that
but they're not making that up. They're referring to something that actually happened because.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that.
You don't know that. You've watched the video. We can play it to you again if you like, Mr. Hancock.
I don't know that. I don't know anything else about it. What I know is that the PM has said that he's been reassured that no rules are broken, and I know that nobody's suggesting that he was there, and I certainly wasn't. So
you lost your job because of breaking the rules, which was probably the right thing to happen at the time. So do you not think, for equality and fairness, that if anybody has broken the rules, that they should lose their jobs too?
Well, that's one of these questions that starts with if, and we don't, and that shows that we just don't know. And you know, in my case, are you
really saying, even after that Allegra Stratton video, that we don't know there was a party? How are you reading that? Because you're reading it very different to the rest of the nation. Well, you're saying that one of them came out with hypothetical questions about, imagine there was a Christmas party. Let's put that question together. Yesterday, no, it wasn't Christmas. The cheese and what? You think they just made all that up?
Yes, but one of the things that I've learnt, especially being health secretary during the pandemic, is that you need to get to the bottom of the facts. And as I say, I don't know those facts. And I have that. We've seen what the Prime Minister said about it. And I wish I could help you more, but I can't because I wasn't there. The Prime Minister wasn't there, as far as we understand, if there was a party.
Should the police get to the bottom of those facts?
Well, the police, I've seen something from the police in the newspapers saying that they'll take it into consideration. I think that's their wording. It's absolutely a matter for them, and it's certainly nothing.
Will there be a record? Supposedly, if you look back at December the 18th last year, will there be a record of who was in Downing Street at that time? You can answer that question. I'm not asking it generally. When you're in Downing Street, your staff go in there. Surely, security protocol will tell you who's in there and who's not. Surely that's the case, isn't it? So there will be a record of who was in there at the time.
Lots of people work in the building. Lots of people come and go from the building. There isn't a record of who comes and goes of all of them, I don't think. But I don't know. This isn't it isn't what I was doing at the time. What I was doing at the time was...
Did your department have any kind of social gatherings? Because Gavin Williamson has admitted that his department has admitted that they had a soiree of sorts. Did your department at any point during the pandemic have any kind of cheese and wine, or just a little open a bottle of wine at the end of the day, and like that?
Not that I'm aware of. We were working pretty hard.
Never worked a day in your life, mate.
It would be unjust if you had lost your job for breaking the rules, but other people were not held to account in the same way.
Look, I'm responsible for my actions, and I take responsibility for my actions. And I resigned, and as you know, I've apologised. And now I'm working on other things, like the dyslexia campaign I started yesterday, and I'm very happy to answer questions about things I do know about, like the data released yesterday by the South Africans on Omicron, but I just can't answer questions about things that I don't know about.
I'm sat here, Mr. Hancock, thinking about, and I myself lost relatives, but thinking about the 140,000 people who lost relatives. 691 people died on that day they were having the party. We're doing it for them. We're doing it for those people that couldn't hold the hands of their family members, or people who couldn't attend funerals. They deserve answers. I know it's okay if you say, well, I don't know, but...
Well, you were the health secretary in charge at the time.
I was the health secretary working in a different part of Whitehall. I've got I just don't have anything else to add.
If you were health secretary now, what would you do? If you were the health secretary now, what would you do?
If I was the health secretary now, I'll tell you what I'd do.
Yeah.
I'd be incredibly keen to find out how serious the cases are when people get Omicron. I'd want to know the studies from more than 12 people about what happens in terms of transmission. I'd want to make sure that we are getting a new vaccine ready for this variant, which the system can now do, we're told, in 100 days, in case the vaccine doesn't work as effectively as it needs to, and we need a fourth, which is a possibility
that is all
with these
fantastic,
data coming through.
But it wouldn't bother you, as Health Secretary, you were making rules and guidance that people within Downing Street were breaking themselves. That wouldn't bother you, would it? That wouldn't be a top priority for you to try and work out, are rules being broken by our own government officials?
The top priority is to try to make sure that lives are saved and we get through this pandemic.
So the rules don't matter.
There's no pandemic.
On the contrary, look,
Pandemic's in your head.
I took responsibility for my actions.
Yeah, but only when you got caught, when there was CCTV.
I took responsibility for my
muppet.
actions, and as everybody knows, and I wish I could tell you more.
You know there was a camera in the office.
I'm not going into it. I'm not going into it.
Yeah, of course not, because you're a bleeding liar. Look at your eyes.
I'm not going into what happened around that period. You know, cards on the table. I've apologised. That's that.
Yeah, you've been held accountable. You have left your job. You've apologised. I think from that I take people should be held accountable, and people should apologise if rules have been broken.
I think the starting point is to understand what happened, and I don't know.
Right. We are continuing to try and find out, to be entirely fair. Going back to the fact that people are keen to find out whether vaccines, because we can't find out anything else, whether vaccines work, don't work, whether they should get their booster, whether we're going to continue to have boosters every 3 months. Because there's a practical issue here, isn't there, when it comes to fighting COVID. The rules were about fighting COVID, the vaccines are about fighting COVID. As a former health secretary, do you see a situation in which the whole population is asked to regularly have a booster jab in order to keep this under control?
Yes, I do.
Every 3 months?
No, I would expect the gap to be quite a bit longer than that.
6 months?
Annual, I think, would be totally reasonable and expected, in the same way that most people have an annual flu jab, because there are these variants. That's why there's an annual flu jab, is because the flu has new variants as well, and we've just got used to it.
Yeah, you just keep making it up as you go along.
Getting to a position where COVID is like flu is where we're going to end up as the world. And, getting the new variant vaccine ready and being able to do that quickly and then get it into people's arms, that's incredibly important work.
There is a call, it's not widespread, but there is a call, and we've seen it in Austria and we've seen it in Greece, from some quarters, for mandatory vaccinations. Is there any argument that you think would justify that?
I don't think that would work for the population as a whole, right? We've been very, very good in the UK at getting very high levels of vaccination.
Do you think it would have a backlash?
Well, I was just going to put it this way. We've been very, very good at getting very high rates. 98% of people have got antibodies. And we've done that through an emphatically positive campaign. You here at GMB, other broadcasters, the NHS, the royal family, everybody's got behind vaccination because it's the right thing to do based on the science. Now, in some areas, I support saying you've got to be vaccinated, like if you choose to work in health or social care. But for the population as a whole, we've managed to get this far without that, which has meant that everybody's behind it, and so I just don't think I think it would undermine the positive vibes that we've got around the vaccine.
And finally, we have been talking about restrictions a year ago. Currently, there are no specific Christmas restrictions. There is a requirement now legally for masks on public transport and in shops. Theresa May stood up in the Commons, former Prime Minister, and says every time there's a variant, we cannot start the economy. Do you think, as you back annual COVID vaccines, do you think it's time to say, actually, she's right, or do we face more Christmas restrictions this year?
Well, as well as the vaccine, we've got a couple of other big things going for us now that we didn't have this time last year. One is the antivirals, the treatments if you get COVID. But the second is testing. So getting tests is a really good way through. If you're going to have a gathering, you know, I had a test before coming here, knowing that I was going to see you. And so having tests, if you're going to have a gathering, is a tool that is in our armoury. Those tests are free. You can go on the government website and download them. And that's one of the big things that's in our favour that we didn't have this time last year.
Okay, and you would recommend that, or you would make that mandatory?
No, I'd strongly recommend it.
Do you see how hard it is, though? You're talking about now imposing new rules and guidance to people. There'll be people at home going, "Why should we bother?" When they've been holding their own parties in Downing Street. Do you realise how difficult it is now to get those messages across?
Well, I think the public have been incredibly responsible all the way through this.
Yeah,
and I think that the people who've stepped up and are volunteering on the vaccination programme have been amazing. You know, I had my booster on Sunday at Newmarket Racecourse, full of volunteers, both people who work in the NHS, volunteering extra hours, and also people from the local rescue service and lots of volunteers helping out. So I think people have really stepped up during the pandemic. It's one of the very positive things about it.
Well, we're grateful to the people, aren't we, at a time like this?
Yeah. And Matt Hancock, thank you very much indeed.